Remember the blockbuster movie about two legendary movie monsters clashing? The epic battle between a mutant lizard and a giant gorilla in a world inhabited by many other incredible creatures. But in fact, there are just as many epic and amazing things that happen to animals in real life. It's just that they are so spectacular and often pass our attention. Let's fix that. Let's start, perhaps, with this amazing fact: cuttlefish have passed a cognitive test designed for children. So now we can officially take the crown off our heads. We are not the only intelligent creatures on Earth. I'm talking about this Stanford marshmallow experiment, whatever they come up with at that Stanford, the results of which demonstrate that there's more going on in weird little cuttlefish brains than we thought. The marshmallow test is quite simple. Children are placed in a room with a marshmallow. They are told that if they can avoid eating a marshmallow for 15 minutes, they'll get a second marshmallow and can eat both. This ability to delay gratification demonstrates cognitive abilities such as planning for the future. This test, in particular, determines at what age a person is already smart enough to delay gratification if it means a better outcome, but later. Some primates, as well as dogs, have demonstrated the ability to delay gratification, though inconsistently. Crows also have passed the marshmallow test. 6 cuttlefish were placed in a special tank with 2 closed chambers with transparent doors so that the animals could see what was inside these chambers. And the chambers contained snacks, a less preferred piece of raw king prawn in one and a much more preferred live prawn in the other. The researchers have found that all the cuttlefish decided to wait for their favorite meal, live shrimp, but the control group realized they wouldn't get it, so they didn't wait. The experiment had several different parts, but the main conclusion was that cuttlefish were able to show self-control, but it was not at all clear why. Species such as parrots, primates and crows associate delayed gratification with factors such as tool use, because it requires planning ahead, storing food for the future, and social competence, because social behavior, let's say providing everyone with food, benefits the social species. But cuttlefish don't use tools, don't hide food, and aren't particularly social. The most unusual crustacean on our planet is the mutant crayfish Marmocrabs, which can clone itself. It appeared less than 30 years ago, and it's still not clear how it happened. The thing is that all Marmocrabs are female, and in fact they lay their own fertilized eggs without the involvement of a male, and the little crustaceans are still female. And now let's talk about an epic battle between humans and invasive species. These are species that have been introduced into the ecosystem by humans, and, in the vast majority of cases, this has led to big problems in the original ecosystems. Let's look at some of the most amazing and illustrative examples. The Marmocrabs, or marbled crayfish, is thought to have emerged in the early 1990s, and they were first bred as an aquarium breed. The amazing thing is that you only have to buy one crayfish and it quickly lays eggs as it matures. The cubs can be handed out to friends indefinitely, until you are tired of it. After all, it's too many eggs that each newly bred pet lays. Soon the crayfish began to appear not only in pet shops, but also in ponds. The owners, unwilling to raise a whole horde of crayfish, decided to release the youngs into the wild. And all the Marmocrabs are female, and they never needed a male to breed. They simply grew, matured, and were ready to make a clutch again. And now it's more like the Marmocrabs conquering the world. If a crayfish is released into a pond, it will definitely lay eggs after a while, and dozens of new inhabitants will appear in the pond. They grow up and lay eggs again, from which their mother's copies hatch. And so it goes round and round. In addition, these animals perfectly adapt to any living conditions and can even crawl from one body of water to another, reaching neighboring lakes and streams with some incredibly frightening speed. So, now Marmocrabs can be found in bodies of water all over Europe. The marbled crayfish's ability to reproduce and adapt is a true superpower, as the creature's numbers are growing exponentially. In 2007, for example, it was brought to Madagascar, and within just a decade, the Marmocrabs has numbered in the millions. This is precisely the reason why both Japan and some US states have banned the sale of these animals in pet shops, as these crayfish simply can run over the local fauna. Here is a graphical illustration of European countries where marbled crayfish already live in the wild. The first marbled crayfish is thought to have originated in Germany and may have been bred artificially. Its direct ancestor is the marsh crayfish Procambarus phallax. When crossed once again, one of the marsh crayfish had a mutated germ cell that contained a double set of chromosomes. The result was the first female marbled crayfish. It had 3 chromosomes instead of the usual 2. All the others have emerged from this individual, and they all have an identical genome. So, in fact, they are all clones of the same female that appeared in the 1990s. Being a species made up solely of clones is a total advantage. One small crayfish can produce large numbers of offspring, with all its cubs just as prolific. And with that rate of reproduction, it costs nothing to invade new land, so the Marmocrabs is considered one of the most dangerous invasive species. But there are others. The tiny 544 square kilometers island of Guam lies in the Pacific Ocean, halfway between Australia and Japan. It is a U.S. territory. Guam was captured by the Japanese during World War II and liberated by U.S. troops in 1944. But with American military equipment shipped in from neighboring Papua New Guinea, new, far more dangerous invaders arrived on the island, namely brown bogies, small, slightly venomous tree snakes. Of all existing ecosystems, the island ones are the most sensitive to invasions. Often there are few predators on remote islands. They simply can't get to isolated areas and conditions there don't change for years. Here, evolution forms endemics unique, unlike any other species found anywhere else which disappear from any adverse external impact. This was the fate that befell almost all Guam birds. Having never seen snakes before, they simply couldn't resist the bogies, which occupied the vacant ecological niche of bird hunting. The snakes, given the right conditions, warm climate, no predators and plenty of food, started breeding uncontrollably, growing to 3 meters instead of the usual 1 to 2 meters. The island's forests turned into the setting for a horror film. Silent and voiceless, devoid of bird voices, full of snakes and cobwebs, for the spiders have also multiplied at an alarming rate without natural enemies. But the forests themselves are having a tough time, as birds and bats used to pollinate the trees and spread seeds. Now there are far fewer seeds, and those that have formed remain under their parent trees, where the lack of sunlight reduces their chances of survival. Guam's future is uncertain, although the U.S. military is waging a chemical war on snakes, scattering paracetamol-filled poison baits through the forest. The lost ecosystem is no longer recoverable. What's more, there are military bases and a major port on the island. Perhaps right now, in the hold of some ship, the boygas are on their way to other islands to wreak havoc there as well. Let's leave the plight of Guam behind and move on to another American territory, the Florida Peninsula. Paradise beaches, vast swamps with watery cypresses, and a staggering number, over 500, of invasive animal and plant species. Asian rhesus macaques and Yemeni chameleons, originally from the Arabian Peninsula, are roaming the branches. The venomous Southeast Asian wingfish are sucking in the local fauna underwater like vacuum cleaners, and the giant Burmese pythons are slithering through unique Everglades swamps in their thousands. Let's take a closer look at the latter. The snakes, oddly enough, reaching over 5 meters in length, have long been one of the most popular pets in the United States. They were imported into the country by literally tens of thousands, and it was only a matter of time before a careless owner released a tired pet into the wild. However, there is a version that the 1992 hurricane that struck Florida was a key factor in the spread of the snakes. Among the buildings it had destroyed was a python terrarium farm. The first finds of scaly giants in Everglades National Park date back to 1990. The snakes went into hiding for a decade after that, and it wasn't until the 2000s, when huge pythons were hit by trucks on Florida roads, that people began to talk about an established population. These days, the reptiles that are inhabiting the state already number in the thousands. Due to vast impassable tropical swamps, their main natural habitat, the population is very difficult to adequately estimate. According to various estimates, there are now between 30 and 300,000 pythons living in Florida. And just one such Burmese python means tens, if not hundreds, of destroyed mammals, birds, and even reptiles. Even populations of common species such as raccoons and possums have been reduced by 90%. And, for example, foxes and marsh rabbits have disappeared altogether. Moreover, pythons are not limited to mammals. You can find near water birds like herons and even alligators in their stomachs. Alligators, by the way, are the only animals of swamps that can occasionally win a fight with strangers. However, they are still not enough to keep the population of rapidly breeding snakes under control. Nor do the Floridian hunters, who kill hundreds of pythons every year wherever they see them. The paradox is that invasive species are dangerous not only to ecosystems, but also to humans themselves. For example, the Black Sea mollusk Rapana. It was first discovered in the Black Sea in the 1940s. It's believed that the tenacious shell arrived on the bottoms of ships that were being transported along the Trans-Siberian Railway after the end of the Russo-Japanese War. Finding themselves in the warm Black Sea waters, Rapana actively began to eat all bivalve mollusks it could reach. Not only it destroyed several endemic species, but also practically wiped out commercial species such as the Black Sea oysters, mussels, and scallops. Perhaps in any other sea Rapana could have been dealt with, but not in the Black Sea, where due to low salinity sea stars its main natural enemies don't survive. But the settlement of the Rapana wasn't the last page in the story of the Black Sea invaders. The fishery of oysters and mussels that went into oblivion was only the beginning. In 1982, the ctenophore Nemiopsis found its way into the area with the ship's ballast water, causing an ecological disaster, without exaggeration. The ctenophore almost completely destroyed plankton stocks, followed by fish stocks that were on the verge of extinction. Already in 1989, the ctenophore population was reaching 400 animals per cubic meter of water. The lack of food was particularly severe for the anchovy, perhaps the most important commercial fish in the Black Sea. The fish couldn't stand the competition for food with the voracious snotfish and practically died out. In addition, the floating anchovies roe, developing in deep water, was also mercilessly destroyed by invasive gluttons. Finally, due to the lack of natural filtration in the sea, eutrophication began, which means pollution by excess organic matter. This led to a reduction in the amount of oxygen in the water, an overgrowth of the reservoir, and the flourishing of harmful microorganisms. Improvement came when another cone jelly, the barrow, a natural enemy of the Nemiopsis, arrived in the sea with the same ballast water. By thinning out its population, the barrow reduced the pressure on plankton and fish returned to the Black Sea. However, it wasn't possible to return to the former stock size. Another interesting example is the coqui, brought from Puerto Rico to Hawaii. The only way to wipe out the thousands of tiny frogs that occupied the entire archipelago, from parks and gardens to mountain forests at 1,170 meters, is to scorch Hawaii. But how can such a small thing affect the economy of an entire state? The answer lies in the very name of the frog. After all, coqui is an imitation sound. The constant frog karaoke has seriously affected Hawaii's real estate market. People simply refuse to buy houses in amphibian-infested areas because it is impossible to sleep there, and tourists aren't happy with screams as loud as 73 decibels. Let us conclude with one more species, the oil palm. Long familiar to humans as a food crop, it began its triumphant march around the world in the 20th century from its native West Africa. Corporations became interested in the fast-growing crop, which produced 9 times more oil than, for example, soy, and it was only a matter of time before plantations were established in the tropics around the world. Entire hectares of forest were destroyed for the palm, and endless rows of identical trees replaced ecosystems full of unique fauna. The island of Sumatra stands out, having lost 40% of its green cover to the palm invader. Scientists estimate that clearance for palm plantations accounted for 8% of global deforestation between 1990 and 2008. Yet it takes literally hundreds of years to regenerate the primary tropical forest with the highest biodiversity. Its speed is ridiculous in comparison to how quickly the oil palm gains new territories. It's estimated that the equivalent of 300 football fields of forest is cleared every hour for new plantations. The story could go on for hours about invasive species, whether it's Sosnowski's hogweed or the box tree moth that has destroyed boxwood forests of the Caucasus. People are constantly facing them in their lives. It is likely that, while you are watching these shots, another uninvited passenger is traveling in the hold of a ship to the other side of the world. But the animals themselves are not to blame for the destruction of ecosystems. They are doing what they are supposed to do, successfully adapting to new conditions as nature requires. The problem of biological invasions is a consequence of unreasonable human activity, which is almost impossible to deal with, and these consequences are enormous. We can only hope that we will have enough sense to put things right and prevent further ecological disasters. Friends, we hope this video has been interesting for you and that you'll share your fair opinion, because it's the feedback that keeps us going. Thank you for watching and see you on our channel.